Political and business leaders around the world are waiting to see what Donald Trump as president will mean for their economies and businesses. Ireland, as a major hub for US tech and pharmaceutical companies, could be particularly exposed to any changes in trade or tax policy. Joining us to discuss is Michael Lohan, the CEO of IDA Ireland, the government agency that oversees foreign direct investment. He's in Davos this morning. Michael, good morning to you. When you're looking ahead to Donald Trump's inauguration as president, how are you perceiving the risk to Ireland and to Ireland's economy from potential policy changes?
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning from Davos. Yes, so I think if you take maybe a look back at the last 24 months in particular from an FDI perspective, we've seen a very changing and different landscape in the FDI world. We've seen protectionism, we've seen industrial policies that's been responding, and that is leading to a very different landscape in which FDI has been competing. I think we're going to see a continuation of that, post inauguration later today. But I suppose from an Ireland perspective, this is something we've been working with for the last 24 months, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to focus on the areas where Ireland brings strengths in terms of the stability of our economy, in terms of the talent that we have and innovation, because at the very heart of multinationals, they're international, look to international markets, and we believe Ireland is that gateway for Europe and indeed for the world, for companies, whether it's from the US or indeed from other parts of the world.
What policies are you most worried about, though? Is it trade tariffs or is it tax changes potentially affecting the tax base in Ireland?
Yeah, so I think both of those elements will certainly have an impact on international trade and by extension on Ireland. Obviously, if we think about tariffs in the first instance, tariffs I don't think will be to the benefit of anyone in the world, whether you're in the US or in Europe. Because I think they'll stymie innovation, they'll actually drive inflation and have a cost impact. So I think they'll be counterproductive. In terms of taxation, obviously Ireland is aligned to the global BEPS process in terms of minimum taxation, and we'd be very much supporting that. All countries around the world stay aligned to the BEPS process, because we do believe in certainty and clarity within the tax regime is very important as well for companies to plan and again to make sure that they can enable their global supply chains, because as we've learned, over the last number of years, and particularly through the challenges we've had, whether it's through COVID or the war within Ukraine, supply chains are so critically important, and we should try and protect those in every facet of our industrial policy from a global perspective.
Which sectors do you see as being most vulnerable to policy changes coming from the US?
Undoubtedly, if we look at I'd speak maybe from an Ireland perspective, you're looking at two major sectors that we have a lot of interaction with the US in healthcare and in pharma and medical device, and indeed in technology. I think that both of those are the sectors which are propelling the Irish economy in essence. So I think there are two sectors, but again, as I mentioned there, if we think about the impact of potential tariffs or changes in those would have an impact on the end user or customer. So I think there has to be a balance, and I would hope, and maybe we're already starting to see this with the administration, you're seeing that balance come into maybe some of the conversation pre-election versus the administration as it takes office. And I think we'll see balance come to the fore in those areas.
Yeah, but there's no downside argument, is there, let's say from a US perspective, to try to reshore the pharmaceutical industry, which President-elect Donald Trump has spoken about in the past, back in 2020, in terms of the amount of pharmaceuticals and medical items that are being made in Ireland and then exported to America. It's something like more than 50 billion euros. There's no downside in terms of making that argument. You could make it about tariffs, but not about medical or pharmaceutical equipment if that is reshored into the US.
Well, I think what you have to consider in that scenario is the capability that's built up within the supply chain, whether it's in Ireland or let's just say it's OUS versus US. That capability is serving the global market as well as the US market. Obviously, there's economies of scale. There's supply chains linked through those facilities and those operations. So at one level, the supply chains are so integrated. Is the first thing you have to consider. The second point, obviously, is in terms of skills, because we know across the world there is a skills shortage. And as companies look to expand and grow, they need to make sure that they can get the skills that's necessary to do that. And again, the diversity of global supply chains allows that diversity of skills as well. So I think all of those factors, is what companies look at as they look to investment, in terms of market opportunity, the skills opportunity, the ecosystem and the stability of the economy. All of those elements are so critically important. And I believe they will continue to be the case as companies look to grow and make sure that they have international markets of scale.
What is IDA Ireland's plan if US firms do move investment away from Ireland? Where are there other countries you're looking at attracting FDI from? What's the plan?
Yeah, so I think that's a very fair question. So maybe maybe two ways. First of all, I don't believe there'll be an exodus of FDI from Ireland or US companies from Ireland, because for the very point, they are bringing real value. They've allowed those companies to create new markets and to grow. So I can see that continuing as we go into the future. Yes, we will have to compete, and we've always had to compete for investments. But as we look at last year, we announced 234 investments by IDA across our portfolio, and that's our international portfolio. And of that investments, 65% of that investment comes from the US. Europe accounts for somewhere between 28 and 30%, and then the rest of the world brings in between 8 and 10%. So we've already built diversity within our portfolio as well. And I think what's critically important, we've changed the type of project as well. R&D in Ireland has really got embedded. Last year was a record year for R&D investment within our portfolio. Just under 2 billion was invested and supported through IDA, through our client companies. So we built, if you want to call it, that longevity of our FDI base, the quality and depth of what's the activities were in our FDI base. So we're actually, while there is a period of change ahead, we are actually entering this from a very strong position from an FDI perspective, and indeed from the Irish economy's perspective as well.
So there are, Ireland has a long tradition of having, foreign companies operating in the country, and you've outlined that. But I do wonder, how do you make the case for attracting new investment now, given the issues particularly around housing highlighted in your own client survey as being a major issue for any company that wants to set up in Ireland? How do you convince a company to set up if there's nowhere for their workers to live?
Yeah, so I think again that's a fair question, and maybe I'll respond in two ways. First of all, the numbers I mentioned that we reported in December of last year, 70 of those investments, of those 234 investments, were first-time or new-name investments into Ireland. So we continue to attract new investment into Ireland. And you're correct, yes, there are carrying capacity constraints, but we also have a response in that carrying capacity. So we see our Housing for All strategy, which has really started to deliver on our housing front, our infrastructure. And again, these are the same challenges that you see in every growing economy. Remember, the Irish economy has grown significantly. Our population base has grown by 10% over the last decade. And that actually has put strain on our investment, or on our infrastructure investment. But we are responding. And I think what's really helpful as well is that this week, actually, the new Irish government has been formed on Wednesday in our Dáil. And in the draft programme for government, at its very core is a number of areas. A commitment in terms of our infrastructure and housing, our commitment to that Ireland is going to have a revolutionary change in terms of a sustainable energy, and indeed a commitment in terms of digital and AI. So I think they're where the growth opportunities are indeed for Ireland as part of that global environment.
Okay, interesting. In terms of the UK, your near neighbour, have you seen interest from companies who are leaving the UK or interested in investing directly in Ireland as a result of the tax changes in the UK, the new tax regime in Britain for businesses?
At this juncture, the UK continues to be a very vibrant market for Ireland, and from an FDI perspective. It also, of course, is a competitor for FDI, and I think the UK has always been so. So we see that interaction continuing over this year. I think as we go forward, I do believe there's more opportunity for Ireland within the UK market. And we're continuously working towards that. So we do see some flows coming towards us. And generally not just tax related, but very much on the basis of skills and talent and growth. That they're the primary reasons that companies look to invest in Ireland.
And has that increased since the budget here at the end of October? Have you seen an increase in inquiries?
I wouldn't say there's a marked increase. I think it's active. I think the marketplace is active, but I wouldn't be marking it as a marked increase.